Love in the Bed of a GAZ-66 by Reading in Solitude. Stargazing. I looked up at the night sky that rests above me, the stars and the moon lighting our evening and washing the world in its white light. Turning my head, I looked to the one who lay beside me, Katyusha. It left me in awe to think how far we had come since our time spent together at the party, when a drunk and tired Katyusha fell asleep on my chest. I remember waking to Nona snapping a picture of the two of us together, though at first my instinct was to jump up. When I felt Katyusha's head pressed into me, all I wanted was to keep her there with me. I placed my hand on her and brushed a lock of hair from her precious face, smiling at her eyes as they glowed in the moon's ambiance. Katyusha's smile warmed my heart, causing me to pull her in close with my arm set just above her belly. Her warmth kept me from the cold evening air by the lake. "Don't let Katyusha go," whispered Katyusha. "How could I?" I asked. "You must be so attractive. I think my arm is stuck to you," I joked with her. "Oh, you think you can flatter Katyusha so easily with such simple flirtation?" she challenged in a playful tone, turning up her nose to me. "Oh no, certainly not. But perhaps I could make her laugh so easily," I suggested. Katyusha's eyes jumped to me, knowing what I was about to do to her. I quickly hugged her and put my hands under her sleeper top in order to tickle her back. Katyusha let out a barrage of laughter as I tickled her and held her tight. Her back arched and fists clenched with joy. "Ah, it's too much," she laughed. Katyusha squirmed, managing to pull a hand out from my embrace and began to tickle me back, causing me to roll over and try to tickle her using my longer arms. But range alone was not enough to defeat the persistent Katyusha, as she crawled quickly to my side and began to get on top of me, forcing me to put my hands up in a surrender. Okay, you win, Katyusha," I laughed. "I can't hear you," she giggled. "Katyusha only hears you want me to keep going." Katyusha clearly enjoyed being on the winning side, and I couldn't help but grin as we play-fought in the back of the truck that we were laying in. "What have we here?" cooed a familiar voice. A bright flash washed over the Katyusha and I, as we looked up to see Nona and Clara peering into the truck, Nona holding an instant film camera. She pulled the picture from the printer and stared before smiling. "Another from my scrapbook." "Hey," whined Katyusha as she sat up on top of me. I sat up with her and placed my hands around her waist, not wanting to have to let her go. "Don't spy on us." "What are you doing?" asked Nona with a smile. Nothing," replied Katyusha, puffing her cheeks. "Looks like a play fight," said Clara to Nona. Nona nodded as the two climbed up into the GAZ-66 with us. It was a converted anti-air platform vehicle that was once more converted from the hauling purpose that the school had bought it for into a camping vehicle by us. "Would you like some pudding?" asked Nona, producing 2 bowls from behind her back. "Is it vanilla?" asked Katyusha, not looking at Nona as she turned her head up. "Oh, well, it just so happens to be vanilla. Would that perhaps happen to be your favorite?" she asked, noticing Katyusha peeking with one eye. Katyusha smirked but did her best to hide it. "Maybe. I guess Katyusha can have some." Nona giggled and passed us the 2 bowls of pudding, one for me and one for Katyusha. I smelled it and I could tell that it was something that either Clara or Nona had made themselves, as it was far too thick and too rich to be store-bought. "And perhaps some oats for Katyusha's pudding?" asked Clara, setting a container of it between the two of us, next to the propane heater. "I'll take some," I stated, taking the container of baked oats and pouring some into my pudding. Katyusha stuck her tongue out but did not have any. We sat and ate together in each other's company, laughing and joking as we often did so when together. Katyusha decided to give a toast to the trip that we were on thus far. "This week has been great, every second of it. Spending time with all of you, it feels right. This is how life should be." "Even the part where you two got stuck on top of the mountain?" asked Nona, covering her mouth as she chuckled. "We didn't get stuck. We just had trouble finding our way back down, said Katyusha, holding herself proudly. What were you up there for again? Asked Clara, scratching her chin. Simulated Spetsnaz training. An expert like Katyusha should be able to find her way back down with only the bare essentials, smiled Katyusha. And some help from me, I said, interjecting. Yes, I said bare essentials, smiled Katyusha. I can't go anywhere without you. I pulled her in close and gave her a peck on the head. Not in front of them, blushed Katyusha. Oh, it's fine. I already have some pictures of you two kissing, said Nona as she began digging through her file of photos. What? Exclaimed Katyusha. Nona chuckled and smiled. It's only proper I get pictures of you two as your romance deepens. That way I can see the journey from where you two started to when you two get married. She then quietly added, and maybe afterwards too. Her and Clara laughed as they enjoyed flustering Katyusha, certainly not to a cruel degree, but enough to make her blush. Katyusha's face turned a deep red at Nona's mention of the word marriage, and she huffed and pouted at Nona, who was getting ready to take another picture of Katyusha for her scrapbook. Though I felt warm inside as well, the idea of marrying Katyusha didn't make me unhappy. I didn't want to have to leave her after school was over. I placed a hand in Katyusha and pulled her in close, kissing the top of her head. Katyusha calmed down as she moved in closer to me to be held, and both Clara and Nona smiled at the sight. I still don't understand how you got lost on the top of a mountain. Can't you just look down? Asked Clara, returning to the last subject. I did not get lost, exclaimed Katyusha. When the night became late enough, and it was time for bed, the four of us washed up and brushed our teeth in order to get ready for bed. So, you two will be sleeping in the GAZ? Asked Clara. In the bed of it, yes, I replied. All right, just try not to be too loud, joked Nona, winking as she did so. I felt myself become flushed at her comment, but said nothing of it to Katyusha. The two left us alone in the back of the truck and moved to their tent that was set up further on the hill from where we were parked. I fluffed my pillow and sat it down, leaning back into it and resting my head. The warmth of the sleeping bag under me softened the harshness of the GAZ's cold steel bed. Katyusha lay down beside me and put her own pillow next to mine. I rolled onto my side, resting one arm under her head and the other around her back in order to pull her in for a hug. We stared into each other's eyes for a while, until this time I felt her make the first move, as she got close to me. I smiled as she leaned in into me so I could pet her soft blonde hair. Katyusha is very happy to have you in her company, she stated. I'm very happy to have you too, I whispered. Though she enjoyed the contact, Katyusha blushed and looked away before changing the subject. What do you think about what Nona said earlier today? About us getting lost? I joked, poking fun at our expedition on the mountain. Katyusha looked up quickly and grabbed the collar of my shirt. She didn't seem quite so upset about my joke at her expense, so much as she was flustered by the emotion stirred within us. No, about us. About us getting married. I pulled her in so our chests were pressed together. Her heart was beating firmly against my chest, and I allowed myself to relish in the feeling it stirred within me. What about it? I asked her at last. Well, what do you think about it? She asked tepidly, not elaborating on her first question. To be honest, I was partially dodging her question, as I didn't want to have to think about the future. Although at first I said nothing, as I really thought about it, I made up my mind on what to tell her. I don't know how to say this, Katyusha, but I don't care how we spend the rest of our lives together, just so long as we are together. I don't want to be away from you. I replied, in a way downplaying my own emotions. The fact that school was almost at an end, and the idea of us having to be apart for any length of time made my heart sink. I watched Katyusha's face light up, and for a second she got caught up on what to say, until at last she answered. Swear on it. Swear that you mean this, shouted Katyusha, jumping from her side of the bed and pointing as she did so. I do solemnly swear, I replied, holding up one hand. Katyusha sat on her knees and appeared to ponder, as I wondered as well. I thought about life after school was through, and what all that could mean for the both of us. This trip that I was on with her, with Clara and Nona, it was something of a final hurrah. It was something for the group of us to remember our time together by. "Already the years have passed us by," she stated. I sat up and leaned against the sideboards of the GAZ and nodded. They have, indeed. I looked back up at the stars with her, the both of us sitting in silence. It was no surprise to me that Nona had taken her camera to get pictures of all of us, especially Katyusha. I knew that Katyusha was held in especially high esteem for her as well. And yet, the time past is none to that which will pass our lives, and even smaller then to that which will pass after us. This time that we have in life, it can be so fragile. It is invaluable, is it not? But that is what makes it so special, said Katyusha, taking hold of my arm. True, that I have only one life to give means something in that I choose to give it to you, I replied to her, leaning my head against hers. If Katyusha can only live once, then she wills it to be spent by your side, she whispered. It's funny how 4 years can pass so quickly, and yet the days feel long, and the classes can seem boring. Each day you expect, tomorrow I will spend the day with my friend, and then eventually there are no more days to be had. I took Katyusha's hand and held it as we went back to watching the stars that night. Perhaps it was but a small speck in our life to come, but in that moment that night was everything. Moving forward, it would simply represent our love perfectly. Something that is made and had simply in the joy of each other's company. Neither of us wanted to think of the prospect of having to be away from the other, nor the prospect of being away from our friends. No matter what comes in life, the bonds of our love, mine for you, Nona's for you, yours for mine, for Clara, our bond as friends that runs between all of us, and the bond that we share alone. Love is what will keep us together. Across all distances, across time, across anything. I promised. Whatever comes, asked Katyusha, whatever comes, I will always be here for you. I swore to her, holding back the few tears that formed at the fear of not being able to live up to the insurmountable promise that I had just made to her, in spite of the inevitability of time, distance, and growing up. But on looking at her, the fear was lifted. It was lifted in me as the light of her eyes drove out the darkness of any thoughts. Love or no love, I'll still miss Tankery, sighed Katyusha, causing me to laugh a little, the mood having been lightened. There's always pro-level matches. I have no doubt you could leave your mark there, I responded. Katyusha smiled, to which I stated, and I will be there for you, every step of the way, no matter what you choose. No matter, she asked. No matter. For I know, Katyusha, you are of good heart, and I know you would never abuse my trust, and so I give it entirely to you, for I love you, Katyusha, I answered, holding on to her arm. I love you too, she whispered, as we slowly faded into sleep.